if I invest in a tool and the next one comes out, have I made the wrong choice, or will there be something bigger and better that's out there? Having access to this type of technology is like the equivalent of giving a marathon runner a bicycle. It's that much of an unfair advantage. And that's genuinely what's happened. I'll share a tip that I provide to everyone, which is it's like going to the gym, right? You're not going to be able to go in there and be able to deadlift the like 7 or 8 plates straight off the bat. What you need to do is learn. All that this signifies is, as advancements are being made, whoever makes them, the time in which it actually goes from like deployment into actual diffusion into organizations is very, very fast. Many small businesses think, well, I'm a small business, like why would anyone want to attack me? Well, that's exactly the reason why they're attacked, because their security posture is so low. There are two things that become absolutely critical before you do this, and I advise anyone to take advantage of these because Microsoft provides them free of charge.
Okay, so today's guest on Talks is going to be Kree Govender. He's an AI evangelist. He works for Microsoft. He's the go-to guy for most businesses when they're trying to understand how to leverage and use AI. And if you're curious about, one, how to start leveraging AI in your business, this is the conversation you don't want to miss. The second thing is AI agents. AI agents are real, and they're essentially going to be the biggest transformation in 2025 that we foresee. And then thirdly, we talked about security. Security is becoming such a prominent aspect of not just AI, but just in general for the businesses. And Kree shared an interesting example or a statistic, which is 70% of businesses, that's 7 out of every 10, if they were compromised, they could not open their doors back up again. Now think about that. If you're a business and your security posture isn't strong, the risk of you getting compromised is absolutely great. And don't think that because you're a small business, no one cares. These perpetrators are looking for businesses like yours because they know you have what they need, small amounts of cash that they're looking for that's going to go unnoticed. But for you, it's going to be detrimental. So they know what you have, they know where your weaknesses are. So if you're not protected from a security perspective, you need to listen to this episode so you understand the importance of security, not just for AI, but in general for your business. Kree, welcome to Talks.
Hey, it's wonderful to be here. I'm really excited about today's chat.
Amazing, Kree, and as am I. Kree, but before we get started, real quick question. What do you do?
I have an absolute honor and privilege every single day to work with some amazing human beings at Microsoft as we go about bringing about the promise of the Microsoft Cloud and today AI to approximately 1.4 million small and medium businesses in Canada. Doing this with our partner ecosystem as well as a highly skilled team in the back end.
Amazing. And Kree, help me understand. AI is all over the place. It blew up really fast, faster than a lot of people anticipated. Obviously, Microsoft was at the forefront of all of this as well and saw this happening in real time. How did you, as an individual, get started with AI? And what excites you the most about it today?
So my career at Microsoft actually started off about 10 years ago with me leaning into the organization as the specialist leader within our business in South Africa for the data and AI team, actually. I've had a fair amount of time working with the technology and being aware of it, but the real inflection moment or change that happened in the industry was when we went from this, in terms of AI that we've had for a long time, to generative AI being stood up. Microsoft in the background has been working with OpenAI for about 7 to 8 years. Even the engineers in there kind of knew something big was about to happen, but it really did spring upon us faster than we had anticipated. Great market-making moment, and the productivity gains that it's brought to the fore has been absolutely phenomenal for us all.
That just makes me think from an aspect of the opportunity came and you were prepared and you jumped on it. And if we look at all of the SMB or the small business segments that are out there, if they're not prepared to pounce or jump on an opportunity, then they miss out, essentially, like a lot of organizations did, and a lot of big organizations did as well, so not even just a small. Your thoughts on that in terms of what AI readiness should look like and how they can now be prepared for the next opportunity to capitalize on?
I often speak about this when I deliver some of these addresses, and it's really about the rate of diffusion of technology and how fast it's actually happening. And when ChatGPT came out, the rate of diffusion before it reached 100 million users was just 2 months, 4 times faster than the previously faster adopted technology. And as we saw with even DeepSeek, like from the time it was launched to it actually exploding and being the number one most downloaded app was literally a day or two. So all that this signifies is as advancements are being made, whoever makes them, the time in which it actually goes from like deployment into actual diffusion into organizations is very, very fast. So a few things happen on that front. Number one, your strategy really needs to be one that's very adaptable and malleable. I think long gone are the days for us to have these very heavy handed, archaic 5, 10 year type strategies. They can be in place, but they really need to be flexible and agile to take advantage of these massive pivots that we start to see coming through into business. So that's number one. Do not be heavily like committed to the course that you've set. Be open to possibilities to pivot and change along with it. The other thing, and this was one of my customers said this, and I think it was so beautifully encapsulated. He said, having access to this type of technology is like the equivalent of giving a marathon runner a bicycle. It's that much of an unfair advantage. And that's genuinely what's happened. We've seen this equalizing force, especially for small and medium businesses who haven't had purified or dedicated functions for things like marketing or copywriting, etc., being able to leverage these AI tools that are deeply rich in terms of that and elevating their performance for them to punch significantly higher than their weight or their weight division.
Absolutely, and I think there's a lot, in that analogy that you gave there is giving the marathon runner a bicycle. It will literally blow everyone out of the water, and that is the power of this technology. I know we've talked about ChatGPT, we've mentioned DeepSeek. What's Microsoft's tool that organizations are using? I'd love to hear that from you.
Yeah, so there's two parts to this. The first one is Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, and you can go onto bing.com today and you can hit the Copilot button in there and be able to leverage Copilot in your personal instance. For organizations that have invested in our productivity suite, so that's our M365 platform, to demystify that for the vast majority of people, if you're thinking your Office suite, like Word and PowerPoint and Excel and so forth, Copilot has been built into that, and it presents itself as an icon that's embedded within the applications that millions, if not billions, are very, very familiar with today. So thus your AI journey begins in the comfort of the applications that you already know. So it becomes a very easy and seamless transition in terms of developing competency and what I'd like to refer to as AI literacy and fluency with a simple and easy to use tool that's wrapped in a very secure environment as well. So risks associated with things like using third party external type tools where there could be data leaks and so forth are largely minimized, if not like eliminated, by using Copilot. So that's one. Then, and we like to refer to that as the UI for AI. I think it's a nice little tagline that the team have come up with. Outside of that, we have these Azure services, and within there, you've got greater customization and flexibility and extensibility that's afforded to you, not only just service the OpenAI type models, but Microsoft's own models, as well as other things such as the meta models, Mistral, and so forth, and that's for deeper development. So a very rich set of libraries and assets that can help customers wherever they may be in terms of their journey.
Yeah, I love how you articulated that and the way you kind of split it up as well. And if we look at just the Bing use case scenario you gave versus the corporate, I think Microsoft really does a good job in simplifying and securing that data that belongs to a corporation. And I love how on my own Copilot, when I'm using it, there's a simple tab that says web or work, right? It really defines what am I searching, what the context is, and is my data secure? And I get a little shield that shows up and that says your data is secure and whatever you're searching is going to stay within the parameters of your organization. I absolutely love that. You also mentioned that organizations have access to Copilot because it's built into the Office 365 or M365 suite. This means these organizations who are already on M365 already have access to this tool. They don't have to download it. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so it comes at a slight premium in terms of your subscription, and that typically works out to like anywhere between $20 and $30, depending on the size of your organization and the number of seats that you need to go and unlock. But it's as simple as that. Once you've subscribed to it, the application pretty much presents itself with the icon and it's upgraded automatically and you're good to go. Though I will caution in terms of this. Like, don't just go out and leverage Copilot straight away within your organization. Like, work with your organization in a very responsible manner. There are two things that become absolutely critical before you do this, and I advise anyone to take advantage of these because Microsoft provides them free of charge, and they're assessments. So we have these things called solution assessments, and they allow us as Microsoft to work with you as the customer together with our partners to deliver these assessments. And we provide you with a view in terms of the landscape that you're dealing with in terms of your actual implementation. We've got them for Copilot, we have them for security, and a host of others. Security is the number one thing because many organizations that I come across, especially with our small and medium businesses, have a very low security posture. And if you want to take advantage of a tool like this that typically has to reason over all the data within your environment, you want to make sure it's being done in a very safe and secure manner. Number one, to prevent external threat actors from entering your environment. And number two, for people within the organization to only have access to the information that they need to have access to. So start off with the security assessment. The next piece on top of that, and this has been around for decades, is that data is absolutely the fuel that is there to drive these technologies forward. So with the data piece, let's make sure that your data is as clean as possible, harmonized, and so forth. And those two foundational components in unison really provides a great jump-off point for you to start walking into your AI journey.
And you talked on data. I love the data aspect of it because a lot of people don't look at it and say, we're just going to enable AI and everything works. It's not as simple as that. Yes, it will work to a certain extent, but if you want to get the real, juices out of it, then you need to ensure that data is set up correctly. You also touched on security. I'm going to touch on data first, and then we'll maybe jump into security. Data isn't easy to clean up and sort out and structure. What's your guidance for organizations in this segment to really understand how to condition and structure data? Is it as complex as we think it is, or is it a lot simpler if there's easier methods around it?
This has been a challenge for as long as I've been within this industry, and it probably predates me, definitely predates me as well. But there was a time not too long ago, a few years back, where we had entire teams that were focused on like data harmonization and like canonical models and great data structures and so forth for enterprise organizations typically to take advantage of. And that was a massive process. And even then, you still had data that was not particularly clean. And it needed to have, a big data warehouse and a data lake, etc. A lot of that has been simplified. A tool like Microsoft Fabric, as an example, is an absolute godsend in this environment. I'll tell you something interesting, TJ. The greatest amount of adoption that we have seen from this tool Fabric has been within our small and medium business, outstripping every other segment. Why? Because it's able to take these disparate or seemingly disparate pieces of data, structured, unstructured, for organizations that don't have these dedicated data teams in place, and really wrap its hands around it and make sense of it and create the connection points that would have often taken years. That helps people really accelerate towards the opportunity that's ahead of them and start to take advantage of technologies like AI.
I love that, Gree. And I think, conditioning and setting up that data in a way that optimizes your business is absolutely the foundational work that organizations need. You touched on security, and I want to touch on security a bit as well, because we don't talk about it enough in cases of AI. But security all across an organization, let alone just AI, is absolutely fundamental. So when we look at setting up for an organization that's going to be leveraging AI, your point on having that data protected, having your environments protected, because if it's not secure, you don't want confidential information that are at the C-suite or director level going across to other levels of parts of the organization that can actually essentially put the organization at great risk. How do organizations protect that?
I'm going to break it up into two parts. And one is the internal piece that you just kind of touched on here, with people not necessarily, or they shouldn't have access to information that they shouldn't, right? It should be in line with where they are in the organization, their permissions, and their role access. So for that, we have tools that actually look into your data that can tell you whether the classifications are correct. And the tools are so advanced right now that with your policies, they can actually go and automatically label them for you. So as an example, if I had to go on and I had to start writing up a document, the AI that's in the background kind of monitoring what's happening, not monitoring in a strange way, like a spying type scenario, but really looking at what type of content I'm pulling together. When I save that, it automatically applies logic to say, it looks like Kree's writing something pretty confidential here. I'm going to go and automatically label it for him, because we're human and we're fallible and we're prone to forgetting about things. I've done this thousands of times in my career. So I'll save it on a drive somewhere. And now imagine that this file hasn't been labeled correctly, and it's got things like sensitive information around employees and salaries, whatever it could be, or credit card information. There are a number of things where the data is private and classified and confidential. And if someone with a simple search is able to go and find that if it's not classified correctly. So we have tools that will automatically do that for you, number one. Number two, they can go and look at everything that's there already and tell you, these are documents that kind of look like they may not have the right tags. Let's go and, you need to take action to go and fix those. The second one I want to think about is really the external threats coming in. And unfortunately, for many of our small and medium businesses, they often think, hey, I've got a service provider and, they've got a firewall and I've got my antivirus in place. I'm good to go. Like, everything's great. And unfortunately, that is such a low barrier for threat actors to jump across, and many of these organizations end up compromised. Cannot tell you, TJ, how many times I find people reaching out on LinkedIn or even through email or getting my phone number somehow and saying, hey, we've been locked out of our account, ransomware. And they said, doesn't Microsoft have a backup? And it's heartbreaking because we can't help them. Not because we don't want to, but physically, like, number one, we're not allowed to take a backup of their environment unless they've signed up for that. It relates to privacy. That's number one. But number two, there's a horrifying stat that I read about Canadian businesses, which is 70% of small and medium businesses, 70%, TJ, that have a cyber incident will never open their doors again.
Wow.
It's an absolute death knell for them. It is so sad when we see this. Working with a strong security provider, one that has access to technology that not only uses AI for productivity, but also in the counteroffensive, really becomes critical. We handle trillions of incidents or like alerts through our full Azure platform per minute. So we're able to be in a great position to help protect these small and medium businesses.
And it's almost like a catch-22. A lot of these organizations are trying to become profitable, but to invest in security and all of this is obviously an investment in itself. But to your point, if 7 out of 10 businesses go under because of this, or can go under because of this, right? Is it not worth investing in? And we always look at it, it's going to be someone else, it's not us, right? We have to protect ourselves. Love the examples that you've given, Kree, there, and I think it sheds a lot of light on the importance of security because of the impact it can have on not just the business owner, but the entire teams, the staff, their families, when that business goes under.
You spoke about this aspect of, like, businesses being under fire and the threat that they're exposed to. Many small businesses think, well, I'm a small business, like, why would anyone want to attack me? Well, that's exactly the reason why they're attacked, because their security posture is so low. Like, you can have a threat actor that will go and target a large institution, but the number of hoops that they've got to go through, the security protocols that they've got to try and breach, it's a lot of time and energy and effort that sometimes for them goes, in inverted commas, unrewarded. Why not go and attack thousands, if not millions, of small and medium businesses where the entry point is significantly lower, the barrier to entry is lower, and then, hold them for ransom for smaller amounts, but cumulatively, it's probably a bigger windfall than hitting an enterprise. And it's also not just about ransomware sometimes. Sometimes they want to sit and lurk in your environment, be leeches, draining out IP over years, or they want to commit fraudulent activities. So there's a number of scenarios that could manifest in terms of why these SMBs become the prime target for them. And the final thing is, we're seeing a change in the industry as it relates to business insurance, where now having a strong cyber security posture is now becoming a requisite for you to be able to insure your business.
Oh, wow. Wow. I did not know that one. That's an interesting one. And it makes sense for if you think about it. It's like age-old saying of taking candy from a baby, right? Like they're unguarded, they're not protected.
Yeah.
It's like, let me just take it from them, and it's easy. And there's no consequences because by the time they understand what's happened, by the time they retaliate, the perpetrator is long gone. Small businesses today, how can they start using AI? So I know we talked about these barriers and these restrictions there. Is there an easier way that they can start leveraging AI so that they can, rather than investing up front, start getting a feel for how it is, what the benefits are, and then make that decision to invest into it?
Yeah, so there's a few entry points for them. Something that we offer is a AI assessment. So it's a self-assessment that organizations can do. You don't have to have any sort of technical depth. It's really designed for business leaders. So you would go on there, it's very simplistic. Like, there's a slider, you choose like different answers based on like 5 or 6 questions, and you choose your industry. We don't collect any personal information, so if you complete it, there's no risk of somebody phoning you trying to pitch you something after that. It's really to help educate people, and it'll do 2 things for you at that point in time. Number one, it will benchmark where you are in your industry relative to your peers, and then it will give you about 4 to 5 use cases for your industry based on the answers you've chosen, or you've supplied rather. What are typical use cases within that industry for you? So it really helps businesses kind of see themselves, their business processes through this lens of AI, and hopefully it creates some connection points for them. At that point in time, they have 2 options. One, they can do nothing with it or take it and build it into a forward-looking strategy, or they can say, hey, I'd like for someone to contact me. And then we as Microsoft, we have a team of specialists that are dedicated to helping serve these SMBs, and they'll walk them through a consultative process, and they can wrap in things like those assessments. So that's one route to go. The second one, and this is something that I advise pretty much everyone to do, go and experiment. It's like going to the gym, right? You're not going to be able to go in there and be able to deadlift the like 7 or 8 plates straight off the bat. What you need to do is learn technique and form and get reps in. And by that, if I draw it back to the technology, it's like go on to something like Copilot on Bing that you're not paying for straight off the bat, and start to learn how to prompt. And you're not going to break anything. You might not get the answers that you want initially, because most people, when they start to work with these tools, the length of their prompts, the first prompts, 4 to 6 words. Why? Because that's the way we've been trained to use search browsers. So they get they put in a very open-ended request, and they get a very vague response back, because the tool is designed to really acquiesce to your every need. So it'll hallucinate something for you and be like, oh man, this thing doesn't work. So you got to provide lots of context. I'll share a tip that I provide to everyone, which is, as you're starting out, just take these words and append it to any prompt as you're starting out, which is, before you answer, what other information would be helpful for you before you provide a response? Just by adding that in, what the tool will do is, if I had to say something like, write me an email, rather than it hallucinating, if you append that, it will actually stop and be like, who's this email for? What's the tone that you want? How long do you want it? Is there sensitivity? And you provide that information and you'll get a much richer response out of it. You start to develop confidence, AI literacy and fluency, which I spoke about earlier on. And then that creates the jump off point for you then to start to imagine what comes next for you and your business in terms of where point use case implementations of this can really unlock massive value for you. And in many instances, differentiation in your marketplace as well.
Speaking to AI is a whole different language, and a lot of people don't realize this. And I get a lot of folks that I speak to day to day that are like, I'm not getting enough out of AI, so how can I justify paying for the paid versions of it? And I always say to them, I said, use the free version when you're at capacity and it's not doing enough for you. That's when you take it to the next level. Again, for the SMBs and the corporate users, using the free version also means that it's going to be web-based, so it's going to actually have access to everything that you're searching. So make sure you're not putting your confidential information in there. Only for the corporate users that have the corporate version of Copilot is where you want to start toying around with your own corporate data. But to get comfortable, don't put your personal stuff in there, but start using it as a query and a search where you're getting the information that you actually want or the responses, and start learning how to prompt. Like you said, it's a whole different language and a conversation mechanism. So start learning how to do that. Kree, the next area I want to go into is the biggest myth small businesses believe or have about AI.
Number one, they believe that they need to have a strong amount of technical expertise within their organizations to actually implement this. And that's frankly not true. When I think about barriers to entry in terms of technologies that have come before this, there have been many things that have been significantly more complex. The other beautiful part about this is we have a thriving partner ecosystem that are well equipped to help these small and medium businesses and enterprises as well, quite frankly, on their journey. So that's number one. The second thing is, well, if I invest in a tool and the next one comes out, have I made the wrong choice, or will there be something bigger and better that's out there? And here's where you need to make a very deliberate choice. So you can go with point solutions, and some of those are really, really good. But if I have to take a step back and think about the large OEMs, and I can say this from a Microsoft lens, as we start to see developments happening within the industry, if there are things that we believe can help our customers at scale, we take that and we'll infuse that into our technology. Point in case, when DeepSeek came out, within a week, we had the model that was actually surfaced through Azure or our Azure platform, right, as one of the models that's on there. Naturally, without some of the challenges that the actual DeepSeek model has with your data residing in China and logging of keystrokes, etc. So you know that if it's through our platform, because we have a very, very, very clear rule, which is Microsoft runs on trust. We do not have access to your data. Your data remains your data, and we honor that because we are definitely not in the business of being in competition with our customers.
Yeah, and the examples you gave, spot on. I think one of the things that I talk to my clients about is it's like waiting for the perfect iPhone, right? Like it's never going to happen. You need to get on now and start building, developing, learning, and eventually, as the new iterations come up, you're already prepared for the next version. Speaking of AI in terms of the tools, is AI biased? How can businesses ensure AI is ethical and fair?
That's often a tough one, TJ, because it's based on the data sets that we've trained the models on, right? We're at a point in time right now where, number one, we've ingested all of the information that we've created on the internet, video, text, the whole nine yards. You know this, right? So the new models that are coming out, if there's no more data to train them on, it's actually being based on synthetic data that we've put in. I would say whichever provider you're working with, try and understand how they, not at a technical level, but what do they do to actually eliminate bias as far as possible? Because ultimately, we're looking at the responses, not we, ourselves, you and I, but the engineers that are training the systems to help actually provide a positive or negative message to the model when it generates something. So there is a degree of subjectivity that's included in that, but it's through that tuning that the model becomes better and better and realizes that, well, okay, this is an incorrect like opinion or stance to have based on rules and policies and laws, etc., that we have in place. And so that's how we aim to try and like reduce bias, but eliminating it in entirety, it's like working with a human being, right? We all have biases. There's no one of us that is devoid of that. And it's the same with these technologies.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I love that. A lot of people don't take the time to invest back in and say, "Hey, here's some feedback back to the vendor or the provider of how this tool is working." And I'm guilty of it as well. But now I think it's more important than ever, given it's AI, because if we want to eliminate these biases, one of the reasons I asked that question is because I always see every time I go to events now, there's always an AI booth. Get your picture taken, and you become a superhero, or you become one of these, and they make that digital avatar. And I always go in there, and it throws them off every time because the data models they're using are not representative of someone who looks like me. So what happens is they actually end up replacing my turban with either a cap or a bandana or something else, something they don't have in their data set, and it throws them for a loop. And I always educate them and inform them and say, listen, like, it's not just about who your target audience is, it's who your target audience isn't. And when you're developing these tools, and you have to really take that into consideration. And this is probably the first time we have to take that into consideration, because the last thing you want to do is have an executive that looks like me come in and you offend them, and then there goes that business for forever, essentially. So it's about taking those considerations. It's about knowing what your data is, and then knowing what the limitations are, right? It's those are all factors of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. And there's a role that society has to play in here as well. Now, if we look at what's happened in some of our social media platforms right now with the disbanding of some of the content monitoring and so forth, I'm all for free speech, but the voices that speak the loudest may not always be the most representative or the most conscious and aligned with what the global view is or should be in terms of that. And if that's the data that's going in to train these models, absolutely it drives a level of bias as well.
Moving into the future of AI, right? What's the most exciting AI breakthrough that's happening right now that we're not aware of, from your perspective, Kree?
The SoftBank CEO just kind of changed his prediction. It was something that I read earlier on this morning, and he said he thinks AGI is going to be here probably 2 to 3 years faster than he had originally anticipated, right? So, first off, disclaimer: there's nothing that I know that's behind the scenes that that I've seen, and even if I did, I'd probably be prohibited from sharing some of that. So this is just purely Kree's take in terms of this, right? So just want to share that at the offset. But I think where we are right now is this aspect of agents, and people right now, most people kind of think of this as automation, and I don't think that that's really the right lens to apply to this. If you just look at the word agent, like, its connotation to the word agency, meaning, as humans, we have agency in terms of things. Like, we can think about something or look at a set of information together. We have agency to go and take action, right? Based on what we see. And we can evaluate the situations. And that's what agents can do for us within our business context as well. I don't see it as this one monolith or like one mega agent that can do everything, but rather I see like many of these agents that perform very tiny thin slices and discrete functions with high degrees of depth that we can then kind of daisy chain together, right? So you could have one that services a part of your business process here and another business process there and so forth, but it's really highly specialized and super smart at what it does. And we're starting to see some of that come to the fore right now. We've released one in our Dynamics portfolio, and it's for customer service. So say you and I were on a call together, we've got this agent that's listening in, and it's called like an intention agent. So if you, as the customer, mention something about like a great experience or even a poor experience you're having with a product or whatever, at the end of the call, it will summarize all of that and it will provide that information back to me as the agent, either in real time or post the call, saying here's how you can aim to solve for this, or here's like an upsell opportunity for you, or here's a fix, etc. And then there's a knowledge agent after that that goes and like scrubs all of that and goes back and it updates standard operating procedures, manuals, so that everything is really like best of breed at that point in time, so that others can take advantage of the latest and greatest in terms of what's coming out into the field. So agents, in my view, is going to be, or are, the next big thing.
You know, we're hearing things about a booking agent that books all your travel arrangements, right? Knows what you like, what you don't like, and that's all it does. It doesn't go out and say, okay, I'm going to order a meal for you, or, you know, at this restaurant. I'm not going to do any of those things. I'm just doing bookings. I've been using agents, or I've been using ChatGPT in a way of agents for the past 6-7 months now, and I've got them in separate roles. Like one does my social media, one is handles my TikToks scripts and guest information that's coming in, right? So it takes care of all of that. There's another one that I have that does just my emails and proposal writing, right? So there's agents that I have that are conditioned and trained on what my structure is, what my style is, what my approach to certain objections are when clients are looking for things. So they're absolutely going to be the future. They're going to be here. And I've already got, I think, about 4 of them. I used to look at them as interns. Like they're my little interns. I've guided them, coached them. They're learning as they go, right? And as they get better, they become SMEs in that specific field. So there's going to be a big gap between that organization that is not using AI, doesn't have a clue about what agents are going to do, to an organization that's already, or a competitor that's already using agents or starting to develop on them. Like they're going to be left in the dust from my perspective. What are your perspectives or thoughts on how they can start getting down that path of getting to agents, and organizations that are almost ready? How can they start leveraging agents?
Let's take it from the lens of those that have experimented with generative technologies for a little bit and have developed that fluency and comfort with it. Ultimately, what that is going to unlock for you is, hey, I know my business more than likely better than most would, like even the consultants would. So you'll be able to pinpoint for yourself where the areas of opportunity are, either in terms of like reducing time and friction and lowering costs, or creating competitive advantage either through things like scale or new differentiated value offerings. And I don't see this as a full outsource of a business process as an example for agents. There should and must always be a human in the loop. You break that business process down into as granular components as possible, and then critically evaluate where does it make sense for you to introduce an agent. So if we have to think about something like order fulfillment as an example, when there's a request that comes through an email, if there's data that needs to be scrubbed and inputted into another system, fantastic place for an agent to do that and lift that capacity away from a human being who's potentially prone to error, and it's a construct of amount of time that they can spend on things. That's something that can be largely infinitely scalable. So I would invite businesses to think about that. There's a very simple model. It's a consulting model that I often leverage when it comes to this. There are 2 axes. One is value and the other one is time. And then you put bubbles, and they're called value bubbles. So the size of the bubble indicates the opportunity that presents. And so if you see a big opportunity, you create a bigger bubble, obviously, associated with it, and that's typically connected to revenue, the value, which makes it the easiest connection point. And when you scatter these out there, it becomes very easy for you to see, because the highest value bubbles sometimes may be the ones that will deliver the greatest amount of value but take the longest amount of time. I would focus on the ones that have the shortest amount of time, may not deliver that much value, but a combination of 4 or 5 of them could far outstrip the largest bubble. So it's a good way to visualize it and then take that back and retrofit it into the business process. Not just to say, oh, okay, agents are out. Like, where can I shoehorn this into my process? Yes, we've got agents. We're on the right path.
Yeah. No, amazing, amazing. I love that, Kree. And and as much as I can keep talking to you forever, I think it's time to switch things up for us as well. And we're going to go into what we call our rapid fire segment.
Oh,
And so,
exciting.
yes, there you go. The rules are simple. I'm going to ask a question, and you respond with the first thing that comes to mind. You ready to go?
Yeah, I must give you a warning. I don't know what's going to come out of my mind.
No, that's the fun of it, right? So we'll start simple. What fuels your day? Tea or coffee?
Coffee,
Okay. AI, disruptor or enabler?
enabler,
Most overhyped AI trend.
picture generation,
First word that comes to mind when you hear Microsoft.
productivity,
First AI driven task you automated.
proposal writing,
Okay. I know the answer for the next one. It's going to be biased, but ChatGPT or Copilot?
Copilot.
Biggest leadership lesson AI taught you?
Number one, that I can use it as a coach and a mentor.
Oh, I love that. Love that. Okay. One word to describe AI's future.
Exponential,
AI in 5 years. Scary, exciting, or plateaued?
exciting.
Favorite gadget you can't live without?
My heart rate monitor.
Okay. Yeah. The last question. If animals could talk, which would you want to have a conversation with outside of any pets you may have?
A snake.
Oh, now I'm curious. Why?
Because I feel that they're often misunderstood and they elicit like these very visceral responses from us. And they're often portrayed in this very negative sort of light, whether it's in movies or
Yeah.
like we often associate them. There's a lot of fear around them. So, it must be tough being the villain all the time, even if you're not poisonous.
Love that. Well, and it goes back to the bias thing we were talking about, right? Like,
There we
listen,
go. There
they're
we go.
they're eating just like any other animal is as well, right? But they're just portrayed in such a vicious and negative way. That's a good point. We know AI is changing the way we work, lead, and innovate. And today, I mean, you brought us so much insight in terms of what this world is going to look like, where we're headed, and how organizations can start leveraging this technology. Any final words for anyone looking at jumping onto this AI? I'm not even going to call it a bandwagon. It's like this is the real deal. Any final words for our audiences, Kree?
Number one, go out and start to experiment. You're not going to break anything. And to the great advice that you gave them, don't put sensitive information in there, but just develop the the connection point with the technologies that are out there, because change can either happen to you or with you, like, but you get to decide, you get to make that vote. And if you choose not to have it happen with you, then it's going to happen to you, and then you're going to be succumbing to some of the pressures and the anxiety and the challenge that that brings. Like, help eliminate some of that and reduce the friction points in your world. And there are people like us, when I say us, I mean Microsoft and many others that are out there to help. So reach out if you need any assistance.
Amazing. Thank you again, Kree, for being here. I absolutely had a blast. If this episode got you thinking, drop your thoughts or any questions you might have in the comments, and we'll get to them as soon as and quickly as possible for you. And maybe we'll bring a whole other episode just based on those questions as well.